Imagine a world map drawn 5 centuries ago that seems to know coastlines Europeans had barely traced. Ships and flags parade across a painted sea, notes crowd the margins, and a bold curve of South America strides across the page with confidence. This is the Piri Reis Map, dated 1513, part artifact, part mystery. For some, it shouldn't exist. For historians, it's a rare window into how sailors stitched knowledge together in the age of discovery. In this episode, we're going to put the legends aside and read the map the way a navigator would. What's actually on the parchment? Where those shapes and names likely came from? And why the most dramatic claims fall apart when you check the details. By the end, you'll be able to point to the ink and separate evidence from wishful thinking. Piri Reis was an Ottoman admiral and cartographer, part mariner, part mapmaker, who served in a Mediterranean world crowded with rivals and information. He fought in campaigns, collected intelligence, and, crucially, gathered charts. He later wrote a pilot's guide to coasts and harbors called the Book of Navigation. In 1513, he produced a large world map on parchment that survives today, in a fragment. He didn't pretend to discover every coast himself. In his own notes, he speaks like a compiler, a man who listens to pilots, buys charts in ports, and distills scattered knowledge into a single sheet. Understanding Piri means understanding a network Portuguese, voyages to Africa and Brazil, Spanish voyages across the Atlantic, and older Mediterranean practices that taught sailors how to turn bearings and distances into lines on skin. What survives of the Piri Reis Map is a roughly triangular fragment, the western portion of a larger sheet, the Atlantic world. You can see the bulge of West Africa to the east, the Caribbean and Antilles near the center, and a long sweep of South America to the west and south. It's painted on parchment animal skin with compass roses, rhumb lines, and careful scale marks typical of portolan-style charts. Place names are written in Ottoman Turkish, often transliterating Iberian names heard from pilots. It is not a full globe, not a modern projection, and not a secret satellite image smuggled into the past. It is a pilot's chart writ large, decorative, yes, with ships and kings, but still a working map, designed to help sailors move from point to point using bearings and distances across known waters. In marginal notes, Piri states that he compiled the map from older charts. He even gives a count. Many sea charts and several world maps, including one he attributes to Columbus. That doesn't prove direct access to Columbus's hand, but it tells us how he thought: collect, compare, and stitch. Imagine a table covered in pilot books, coastal sketches, and Atlantic sheets brought by Portuguese and Spanish mariners. A name appears on two charts? Keep it. A shoal repeats? Mark it. Two capes disagree? Split the difference, or favor the chart with better reputation. This is how early modern cartography often worked. Before precise longitude, map makers relied on bearings, estimated distances, and memory, then reconciled contradictions with experience and the authority of a source. Follow the coast of West Africa on the map, and you see confidence. A chain of capes and river mouths that matches what Portuguese pilots had been sailing for decades. Place names echo that influence, sometimes through Ottoman ears, familiar capes, trading stations, and river bars. The spacing of ports and the steadiness of the shoreline tell you the sources were practical sea charts, not philosophical world maps. Rhumb lines radiate from compass roses in the ocean, letting a navigator carry a bearing from the Canaries to a known landfall. This portion of the map looks like what it is: an accumulation of Iberian seamanship distilled into Ottoman ink, with just enough ornament to signal power and pride. Turn to South America, and the map grows bolder. A broad, forward-jutting coastline sweeps down from the equator into higher latitudes. You'll notice names that sound Iberian, spelled as an Ottoman listener would hear them. Rivers are exaggerated, capes are confident, and the general bulge of Brazil looks recognizable, even if the fit isn't modern precise. Remember the method. Coasts came from sailors sailing. Piri didn't need to invent a continent. He needed to compile it from voyage after voyage, then smooth the joins. Where information thinned farther south, the ink hesitates and decorative figures creep in. That isn't a secret message. It's what map makers do when blank space meets a patron's eye. Fill the gap with art until the data catches up. In the Caribbean, the map looks crowded. Islands cluster and sometimes misalign. Familiar names appear alongside variants. That's a fingerprint of compilation. Early Spanish reports scattered coordinates and distances with uneven accuracy, and pilots guarded hard-won local knowledge. Piri's notes mention Columbus as a source, which would explain some island shapes and names in the Antilles. But the density can mislead modern readers. A misplaced island doesn't mean a lost civilization. It usually means a copied error or an honest guess. What matters is that the pattern and archipelago fanning westward was correctly recognized. For a navigator, this part of the map is a field guide, not a globe. Look for this chain after this bearing, then turn for that river mouth or cape. One way to read the map is to ignore the pictures and follow the geometry. See the compass roses scattered across the ocean? Lines radiate from them in a starburst. Those are Rhumb lines. The courses a pilot could steer by compass. In practice, a captain would hold the bearing, watch speed by logline, and estimate distance. A chart like this helps stitch those legs together, from the Canaries on one heading to the trades, then another to a known landfall. These charts weren't meant to preserve perfect geography. They were meant to preserve successful routes. That's why coastlines look strong where sailors actually sailed, and go vague where only rumor reached. Understanding that purpose dissolves half the mystery. Now, the headline claims. The map does not show Antarctica without ice. That coastline people point to is a distorted extension of South America, a common artifact when compilers lack good southern data. Nor is the map supernaturally precise in latitude and longitude. You can visually align familiar shapes, but the projection is portolan-style, not a modern grid. Claims that it encodes lost global surveys ignore how the rest of the sheet behaves, with normal early 16th century strengths and errors. When you measure the coastlines objectively, you see a skilled compilation from Iberian Atlantic charts, not a window into forgotten satellites. The drama shrinks, but the achievement remains, and it's impressive enough without myths. Across series scholarship, several points are stable. The date 1513 is consistent with the style, pigments, and Piri's own notes. The surviving fragment covers the Atlantic world, not the entire globe. The map's geometry and decoration are consistent with portolan-influenced practice. Rhumb lines, wind roses, scale bars, and coastal emphasis. Many place names can be linked to Iberian usage, filtered through Ottoman spelling, and the method Piri describes, compiling from multiple charts, is exactly how large maps were often made before precise longitude. None of this needs a lost civilization. It needs sailors, charts, and a cartographer skilled at reconciliation, painting what pilots knew and admitting with ornament what they did not. Even without myths, the Piri Reis Map matters. It shows how quickly information traveled in the early 1500s from Portuguese caravels on the African coast to an Ottoman workshop where those lines gained new life. It reveals the practical logic of portolan mapping. Routes first, coast second, interiors barely at all. It records toponyms that preserve early contact, trade, and rumor. And it reminds us that empires competed as much in knowledge as in ships. To read the map is to watch navigation become narration. A working tool turning into a statement about the Atlantic world and about who gets to draw it. So here's the honest picture. The Piri Reis Map is a striking early 16th century compilation of Atlantic knowledge, painted with pride and stitched from many pilot charts. Where sailors had sailed, lines are strong. Where rumor ruled, paint fills the gaps. The famous claims don't survive contact with the details, but the map doesn't need them. Its real story is better. A world of competing powers, sharing, stealing, and sorting information at sea, until a cartographer gave it shape on parchment. If you want more hidden history told straight, subscribe to Phantom Codex. Next time, we'll test another legend against the evidence and see what the ink actually says.